Love true crime stories? Hit subscribe and turn on the bell for more shocking cases every week. On the glossy wood floors of the city's most exclusive fitness club, Alex Carter always stood out. With an athletic build sculpted by years of training and a smile that disarmed even the toughest clients, Alex was the personal trainer everyone talked about. His roster was filled with local celebrities, corporate executives, and old-money families who prized discretion as much as results. But no client challenged or intrigued him quite like Charlotte Evans. Charlotte swept into the club for their first session with the air of someone accustomed to being noticed. She was in her early 40s but looked younger. Blonde hair impeccably styled, subtle diamond stud earrings, and tennis whites that seemed more suited to a fashion shoot than a gym. The staff addressed her as Mrs. Evans, a nod to her marriage to one of the city's most prominent real estate moguls, Richard Evans. From the start, Alex sensed Charlotte was different. There was a confidence, yes, but also an underlying tension. A glance over the shoulder, a question asked in a careful whisper, a laugh that seemed to double back on itself. Alex had worked with many wealthy women, coaching them towards sculpted arms and tighter cores. He was used to harmless flirtations, the occasional gift of cologne or restaurant voucher. But Charlotte's gaze lingered longer. Her questions strayed beyond fitness. She wanted to know about his background, his relationships, his dreams. Their sessions became a highlight of the week for both trainer and client. Alex changed up routines to keep things lively. Yoga in the rooftop garden, boxing mitt drills in the private studio, resistance circuits punctuated by playful banter. Charlotte responded with new energy, showing up even on rainy mornings when she'd usually cancel. Sometimes she would stay long after the session ended, stretching alongside Alex or sharing details from her life. A son away at boarding school, charity galas, the strains of keeping up with the city's social elite. But Alex soon learned that Charlotte's perfection was a veneer. When she spoke about Richard, her husband, her voice grew tight and careful. There were hints, offhand remarks about his temper, the pressure of his business, late nights that stretched into mornings. Alex listened, offering sympathy but never asking too much. It wasn't his place. One morning, as they cooled down after a strenuous hit session, Charlotte stood close, sweat glistening on her brow. "Do you ever feel like you're living someone else's story, Alex?" she asked quietly. "Like you're just acting out a role?" He considered, then nodded. "Sometimes, but you can always rewrite it." She smiled, the sadness in her eyes belying her casual tone. "That's what I want to believe, too." From then on, a subtle current pulsed beneath each session. Alex found himself anticipating her arrival, replaying their conversations, brushing off the curious looks of other clients. Charlotte, in turn, brought small gifts, a health shake she'd made herself, a new book she thought he'd enjoy. It was after a particularly intense circuit that Charlotte's demeanor shifted. Alex handed her a towel, and their hands brushed. She didn't pull away. Instead, she looked up at him, her voice barely a whisper. "Would you come to the house sometime? Just for a private session?" Alex hesitated, professional boundaries flashing in his mind. He'd done home visits before, but never for someone as high-profile as Charlotte, and never with such a charged invitation. Still, he agreed, trying to mask his own intrigue. A week later, he pulled up to the Evans estate, a sprawling, modernist villa perched above the river, all glass and stone and manicured gardens. The security at the gate looked him over before letting him in. Inside, Charlotte led him to a sun-drenched private gym, her mood lighter, almost giddy. They trained harder than ever, the space echoing with laughter and the low thud of dumbbells. Afterward, Charlotte poured fresh juice and insisted he stay for lunch. As they ate by the pool, she spoke freely, venting about her husband's neglect, the loneliness that haunted her despite her glamorous life. "You might envy my life on the outside," she said, eyes distant, "but sometimes I just want to disappear. Is that crazy?" Alex shook his head. "Everyone wants to feel seen. Even you." Their gazes locked, and the conversation trailed off, the boundary between trainer and client blurring. After that day, the sessions at the estate became regular. At first, once a week, then twice, then as often as Richard's business trips allowed. Staff at the house grew used to Alex's presence. The trainers at the club exchanged knowing glances, speculating on rich clients and their favorite coaches. Alex told himself it was just professional, but the line was thinning. When Charlotte texted late at night, questions about nutrition, worries about sleep, he always replied. When she complimented his strength, his patience, her words lingered with him for days. One evening, as the sun set over the city and the sky blazed pink above the garden, Charlotte took a step closer, her hand on Alex's arm. "Thank you," she whispered, her lips trembling, "for making me feel alive again." This time, he didn't pull away. Outside, the heat of summer grew oppressive. Inside the villa, a new heat threatened to consume them both, a secret now blazing, impossible to control, and far too dangerous to ignore. The rain had barely stopped when Alex parked his car outside the Evans estate, but the humidity still clung to the air, making it feel as though the storm was hovering just out of sight. The guard at the gate barely looked at him anymore. With every visit, Alex slipped more convincingly into the rhythms of the Evans world, but today felt different, tenser, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. Charlotte met him at the door before he could even ring the bell. Her expression was less composed than usual, her eyes searching his face for a reassurance she hadn't needed before. "Richard's in Geneva for business," she murmured, ushering him through the grand foyer. "No staff around until this afternoon. We're safe for now." He followed her up the polished staircase and into the private den. The room was lined with books, the smell of old paper and faint perfume hanging in the air. Charlotte locked the door, turning towards Alex with urgency. She didn't waste time. "I want to go through with it," she said quietly. "If we're ever going to figure out who's behind this, we have to push back. I need something real enough, dangerous enough, to force them into the open." Alex took a steadying breath. No part of this felt like a game anymore. That means crossing a line. Once we do, it's hard to step back. "I know," Charlotte replied, voice barely more than a whisper. "But I can't keep living like this. Every shadow looks like a threat. Every phone call a possibility for disaster." They mapped out the details, how they would plan evidence for the blackmailer to find, how Charlotte would orchestrate plausible scenarios for witnesses to see them together and whisper. There would be texts sent at odd hours, small personal belongings forgotten in Alex's car or jacket, a hotel receipt carefully left in plain sight. Charlotte rehearsed her role, a laugh just a little too loud in the gym's quiet corner, a hand resting on Alex's shoulder a second too long, a sigh as she left the room. Alex felt the line between reality and performance blur, an uneasy thrill prickling beneath his skin. The first part of their plan hinged on the staff. Charlotte would ensure her longtime housekeeper, Clara, was nearby when she made a hushed phone call to Alex. The club's too public, Charlotte would whisper just loud enough for eavesdroppers. "Let's meet at the lakeside park tonight at 8. It has to be private." The call was staged, but the anxiety in her voice required no acting. Later, Alex sat alone in his car, parked on the edge of the park as the city lights flickered across the water. He watched for Charlotte, knowing she would circle the block and never actually get out, just in case someone was tailing her. The trap was set. Now they waited. The next morning, Charlotte found an envelope slipped under her bedroom door. The handwriting was the same as before, but this message was shorter, colder. "You're not as clever as you think. You're being watched." She showed it to Alex, hands trembling. "It's working," she whispered, but her voice quivered with fear. Her paranoia began to bleed into every corner of her life. She started watching the faces of her house staff, the security team, even her neighbors. Every noise at night became a possible intruder. Every unfamiliar car on the street set her heart racing. Yet, in a strange way, the danger drew her closer to Alex. Their messages became more frequent, less guarded. He started to confide, too, about his own lonely life, his guilt over crossing boundaries, how badly he wanted to protect her. It didn't take long for the performance to start feeling real. One evening, Charlotte invited Alex to stay for dinner. They ate cold salads by the pool, the city haze turning the sunset gold. She told him about her past, a time before Richard, when things felt light and possible. Alex listened, drawn in by the honesty and the vulnerability, feeling his role shift from accomplice to something he couldn't quite name. But the danger escalated quickly. A second envelope appeared, this time at Alex's apartment. It contained a photo of him laughing with Charlotte by her car, the time and date scrawled in the corner. On the back, a single threat: "One more move, and I tell him everything." The implication was no longer just about Charlotte. Whoever was behind this was watching them both. They met in secret at a small, rarely used yoga studio in the city. Charlotte's composure was cracking. "Someone inside the house is involved," she said, fiddling with the charm on her bracelet. "It has to be Clara, or maybe one of the drivers. Richard's not back for another week. If this goes any further..." Alex interrupted softly. "We can't pull back now. Whoever's doing this, they want something. Either money, or to see you and Richard destroyed. Maybe both." Charlotte nodded, wiping at her eyes. "I never meant for you to get pulled into this, Alex." He shrugged, the responsibility heavy, but somehow already his. "We're both in it now, whether we meant to be or not." The plan grew darker. Charlotte would lose a valuable necklace and claim she left it in Alex's car. She'd have a tense, public argument with him in the garden, then storm inside, tears real this time. Alex would linger by the gate, waiting for the staff to notice. Every stage detail was another invitation for the blackmailer to make a mistake. And then, just as suddenly as it began, there was another note. This one was shoved under Alex's office door at the gym, the scrawled handwriting growing sloppier. "Last warning. One more lie and it all burns." Charlotte's facade was almost gone. She became jumpy, forgetful, prone to tears. Alex had trouble focusing at work, checking his phone constantly, dreading the next message or call. They clung to one another in the moments they could, comfort passing between them in small, desperate touches. On a stormy night, Charlotte called Alex. Her voice was raw, desperate. "I think I saw someone in the garden, watching. I can't do this much longer." Alex promised to watch the house from his car, parked down the street. All night, he saw nothing, but he understood. Whatever line existed between them and the truth, they had now crossed it for good. There was no way to go back. All that was left was to push forward and hope that the next move wouldn't destroy them both. Every time Charlotte glanced over her shoulder in the Mammoth Villa, anxiety pulled tighter around her neck. The aftershocks of their staged affair were everywhere. In the quiet tension between her and her staff, in the way Alex lingered a moment too long whenever their eyes met at the club, in the new, raw edge to her voice on the phone. Living in a lie was always draining, but now the fear was real. Someone was watching, and not just for show. A new note appeared 2 days after the last. This one came not by envelope, but slipped between the fresh towels in Charlotte's bathroom. The writing was messy. "Careful who you trust. You're not as clever as you think." She sat on the edge of the tub, the blood draining from her face, and called Alex, her voice trembling. "This wasn't just for me. It's for both of us. They know." Alex's own life was shifting too. Sleep eluded him. Every time his phone vibrated, his stomach clenched. He tried to maintain normalcy at work, but the routines with his other clients felt empty, automated, as if he were sleepwalking through someone else's life. The only thing that felt real anymore was the intensity of Charlotte's fear, and his growing need to help her, to pull her from the wreckage of whatever trap they'd set for themselves. They met in Alex's car after dark, engine idling, rain streaking the windows. "It's Clara," Charlotte said, twisting her hands. "It has to be. She's been distant, watching me. Maybe she's scared. Maybe someone's forcing her." Alex shook his head. "Or the security team. Or Richard's driver. We don't know who might be involved. But if the blackmailer knows about the park, it had to be someone inside the house." They agreed on a new plan. Charlotte would leave an expensive-looking envelope in her bedroom, making a show of telling Clara about it. She'd claim it held cash, an old-fashioned payoff for an old friend. If the envelope disappeared, or if another note came, they'd know. The wait was excruciating. Charlotte drifted through her house like a ghost, her routines mechanical and brittle. She would catch Alex's eye in the club mirror, searching for a sign that this was still their game, that neither of them had lost control. But when a next note appeared, this time tucked into Alex's gym locker, control was the last thing they felt. You're making this worse for yourself. You're running out of time. The fear pressed them into new corners. Charlotte started sleeping on the couch in her den with the lights on, her phone clutched in her fist. Alex, too, grew reckless, driving by the Evans house at night, circling the block, watching for any sign of movement in the shadowed garden. The game now felt less like an act and more like a real crime, one with implications neither of them were prepared to face. Richard came home unexpectedly late one night, his presence turning the house electric with tension. He greeted Charlotte with a distant kiss, Alex with a polite but pointed handshake. "My wife's been restless," Richard said after their workout, his words sharpened by suspicion. "If there's something she's not telling me, I'd expect you to let me know, Alex. We value loyalty here." The warning hung between them, unspoken but clear. That night, Charlotte called Alex in a panic. "I think someone's in the house. I heard footsteps upstairs, but when I looked, no one was there." Alex tried to reassure her, but his own resolve was slipping. "We can't go to the police," Charlotte whispered. "If Richard finds out about any of this, he'll ruin me. And you." Desperation forced another confession out of Charlotte. In a tearful call, her voice hoarse from crying, she said, "There's something from before Richard, something I hid for years. If this person knows, if they tell him, it's over for me. My family, my reputation, everything." The truth tumbled out in broken sentences. A relationship years ago that ended badly. A secret that could be twisted into a scandal. "I never thought anyone would connect it to me. But it's possible. Maybe Clara found something. Maybe someone paid her to dig." Alex listened, torn between outrage and protectiveness. He wanted to storm the Evans house and confront Clara, but knew it would only tip their hand. Instead, he offered a different plan. Draw the blackmailer out, force them to reveal themselves. But it meant pushing the lie to its limit. The next day, Charlotte staged a new performance. She ordered Clara to deliver a box, heavy and locked, with a forged label, to a fake address, warning her that its contents were very valuable. The box was empty, but the message was clear. If Clara was involved, she would try to break in or report back to the blackmailer. Hours later, a new message appeared, this time sent directly to Charlotte's phone. "Stop digging. You have more to lose than you think." Now the threats were personal, not just exposure but harm. Charlotte's hands shook as she read it to Alex, her voice almost gone. "They know everything, or they want me to believe they do." Alex, anger and fear pounding in his chest, vowed to see it through. "We'll get through this. We just have to survive a little longer." But Charlotte was unraveling. Her nerves were flayed raw. She flinched at every unfamiliar sound, every message. Richard's suspicion grew. He started questioning her whereabouts, quietly interrogating the staff, even hinting at hiring new security. The walls were closing in. Late that night, another envelope was slipped under Charlotte's bedroom door. This time, there was no note, just a single photograph. Alex and Charlotte together, her hand on his cheek, too intimate to be explained away. On the back, a simple message in thick black ink. "The end is closer than you think." Charlotte called Alex. "I'm scared. I can't do this anymore. What if Richard already knows? What if this person, whoever it is, just wants to destroy me, not get money?" Her voice was trembling, real terror breaking through the mask. Alex listened in the darkness, the gravity of everything settling on his shoulders. "Whatever happens, we're in this together. We started this together. We'll finish it together, too." Neither of them could see the shadows moving outside the house, nor hear the soft footsteps fading down the hall. But they understood, with perfect clarity, that the next choice they made could be their last. The house felt colder that morning, as if something vital had seeped out of the walls during the night. Charlotte barely slept, haunted by the image of the photograph left under her pillow, a photograph that could destroy everything. The memory replayed in her mind, her hand on Alex's cheek, the forced intimacy of their game, now a loaded weapon in someone else's hands. She flinched at every sound, barely able to meet her own reflection in the gilded bathroom mirror. Alex was the first to message her, his words clipped and tense. "I know it's hard, but we have to act normal. I'll come by at noon." She replied with a shaky "okay," her fingers barely steady enough to type. The hours dragged, each minute thick with dread. She tried to lose herself in routine, coffee, emails, a robotic call with her son at school. But every word sounded hollow, every movement rehearsed. When Alex arrived, he felt the difference. The housekeeper greeted him, eyes downcast and voice quieter than usual. Charlotte led him straight to the private study, careful to close the doors behind him. Her hair was pulled back, her eyes rimmed with lost sleep. She handed him a photograph without a word. He stared at it, jaw clenched, then turned it over to read the thread again. "The end is closer than you think. Whoever's doing this isn't going to stop," he said, voice low. "They're escalating. They want you scared." Charlotte nodded, brushing away tears. "They're succeeding." Alex had never seen her like this, so openly afraid. "We can't keep reacting. We have to force their hand." They whispered through their options, tossing out plans as quickly as they came up with them. Going to the police was impossible. Richard would find out, and then all their secrets would flood into the open. Firing Clara or another staff member would raise suspicion. Charlotte's nerves were razor thin. "What if it's Richard?" she whispered. "What if he's testing me? He's done it before, hired people to tempt me, to see if I would break." Alex shook his head. He wouldn't use threats like this. He'd confront you directly, or he'd already be gone. An uneasy truce settled between them. There were too many suspects. Everyone in Charlotte's orbit seemed guilty now, everyone a possible conspirator. That afternoon, the Evans mansion was full. Richard was home, taking meetings in his office. Staff bustled in and out, adding new layers of tension. Charlotte pretended everything was normal. She smiled through brunch, answered Richard's questions, showed the decorator around the new guest suite. But inside, she felt herself unraveling. She replayed every interaction, looking for some sign, some clue she'd missed. Alex watched her from across the room during their scheduled session. Her hands shook on a yoga mat, her eyes never settling on anything for long. As the day drifted toward evening, a scream shattered the fragile calm. Charlotte rushed down the main hall to find Clara sprawled across the marble, her hands stained red. "Help me," the housekeeper gasped, voice thin with terror. For one wild moment, Charlotte thought Clara was bleeding, but then she saw the truth. Blood, fresh, bright, splattered across the floor, trailing up the steps toward Richard's office. Instinct overpowered panic. Charlotte looked to Alex, who moved quickly to Clara's side. She was shaking, eyes wide with shock but unhurt. "I found him," Clara whispered. "You have to help." Footsteps thundered from upstairs. Richard's business partner, Mr. Dalton, appeared at the landing, face ghostly, phone clutched in one hand. Then chaos. Richard Evans was found collapsed behind his desk, blood seeping from a wound just below his collarbone. His chest rose and fell, barely. His eyes fluttered, unfocused. For a split second, everyone froze. Then Mr. Dalton dialed emergency services, barking orders. Charlotte knelt beside her husband, her hands hovering, afraid to touch him. Alex hovered at her side, glancing at the door, his mind spinning. Who had done this? Was the blackmailer capable of violence? Had this all been a lie, or a warning that went too far? Sirens screamed outside. Paramedics flooded the house, the flashing red lights painting the white walls with dread. The police arrived next, asking sharp questions, corralling everyone into separate rooms. Hours blurred together. Charlotte could barely remember what she told the detectives. She admitted to nothing, denying any fights with her husband, sticking to bland details about the day. Still, the questions came. Did you see anything unusual? Did your husband have enemies? Had anyone threatened him? When the house finally emptied, Charlotte found Alex in the den, sitting rigidly on the sofa. The adrenaline was gone, replaced by bone-deep exhaustion. "Richard is alive, but in surgery," she said, her voice paper thin. "They don't know if he'll wake up." Alex took her hand, squeezing it gently. "Are you okay?" Charlotte shook her head. No, I'm not. What if this is all connected? What if the person blackmailing me tried to kill him?" She fell silent, thinking of all the secrets that now felt irrelevant against the raw terror of blood and violence. The police returned the next morning, this time with more questions. They had found no sign of forced entry, no prints but those of the family and staff. Suspicion pooled around the people who lived closest. Charlotte watched the officers comb through security footage, her heart pounding. She knew the cameras had blind spots, places Richard himself had insisted upon. Was the killer someone inside the house? Or did someone Charlotte trusted let them in? Clara was questioned for hours. She sobbed through her statement, insisting she knew nothing of any plot, threat, or secret. But the officers looked unconvinced. Alex, too, was questioned. Why he was at the house, what his relationship to the family was, why Charlotte called him before calling emergency services. He told them the truth, but left out the lies. The staged affair, the blackmail, the secret fear that everything was spiraling out of control. When night fell, the house was emptier than ever. Richard was still in intensive care, the staff suspended until further notice, police tape blocking off half the upstairs. Charlotte and Alex sat together in the dim light of the den, neither willing to look at the other for long. "I think I know who did it," Charlotte whispered at last. "Someone who wanted to punish Richard. Someone who knew my secrets." Alex swallowed hard. "Do you think it was Clara?" Charlotte shook her head. "I think it was someone else, a person we've missed. Someone hiding in plain sight." Her words hung in the dark, unanswered. Lies and secrets twisted around them, suffocating. Both of them knew that nothing would be the same again, that whatever truth emerged next would not set them free, but finish the destruction already begun. Charlotte barely slept in the frozen aftermath of Richard's attack. The mansion, once a fortress of privacy, now buzzed with police radios, hushed voices, and the click of detectives' shoes on marble floors. Crime scene tape fluttered at the edges of her vision, a constant reminder that whatever semblance of safety she'd clung to was gone. She sat for hours in the den, replaying the days leading up to the violence, searching every memory for something she'd missed. A gesture, a glance, a warning. None of it made sense. Alex called at dawn. His words were careful, as if the phone lines themselves might betray them. "I have to talk to you face to face. There's something I found." His voice was quiet, strained. "Be careful, Charlotte," she promised, but heard her own voice crack. Fear, guilt, and exhaustion blurred together until she couldn't tell them apart. When Alex arrived, he didn't come through the front. He used the garden gate, slipping past the empty pool where the summer's laughter now felt like a memory from another life. Charlotte met him in the kitchen. Both looked older, drained by secrets. Alex produced a small flash drive, pressing it into her hand. "Security footage from the East Wing. I managed to get a copy before the police took everything." Together, they hunched over her laptop, watching hours of grainy night vision footage scroll by. There, a shadow moving through the corridor, pausing near Richard's office just after midnight. A figure in a staff uniform, but taller, broader than Clara. The face, when it turned briefly towards the light, made Charlotte's heart collapse. It was Mr. Dalton, Richard's oldest business partner. The same Mr. Dalton who had called the ambulance, who'd claimed to find Richard, who had always been just close enough to every conversation. Alex cursed softly. He knew about the blind spots in the cameras. He's the only one who could get around Richard's security system. Charlotte's hands trembled. He must have found out about the blackmail. Maybe he was always watching, waiting for a moment when the family was at its weakest. The theory formed quickly. Dalton, desperate after a sour deal with Richard, saw Charlotte's secrets as leverage, using Clara or a staff member to feed him information, letting the threats escalate until panic broke the family's unity. Maybe the attack was never meant to kill Richard, just to frighten him, to force concessions or control. Their fear turned to anger as the realization set in. It had all been a manipulation, a game with real victims. Charlotte wanted to call the police at once, but Alex cautioned her. "If we go in with just this, Dalton might talk his way out. We need proof he sent the threats. They searched the study for clues, Charlotte's heart pounding. A stack of old files on Dalton's business trips turned up nothing, until Alex pried open a locked drawer in Richard's desk. Inside, among insurance documents and spare keys, was a cheap burner phone, battery pulled out. Alex powered it up, scrolling through messages. There they were, every threat, every blackmail demand, each photo sent from the phone they'd always assumed belonged to an anonymous stalker. Dalton had used the household's own blind spots, physical and emotional, to orchestrate his plot. Charlotte stared at the phone, her hands shaking. He was in our home, eating at our table, all the while doing this. Alex wrapped an arm around her shoulders, steadying her. We're not done yet. This time, we'll make sure he's caught. They called the detectives, presenting the flash drive and burner phone as evidence. For hours, Charlotte recounted everything. The blackmail, the staged affair, her suspicions about Clara as a pawn, all the pieces she'd been too afraid to voice out loud. The police listened, grim-faced, weighing her every word. When at last they brought Dalton in for questioning, the feeling in the house shifted. The threat wasn't gone yet, but it had a name now, a face. It was less a ghost, more a wounded animal. Days blurred together. Charlotte sat with Richard in the hospital, her husband pale but alive, drifting in and out of consciousness. Police officers patrolled the halls of the mansion as the staff, one by one, were cleared of suspicion. Clara, found to be guilty of nothing more than fear and confusion, left quietly, her loyalty irreparably broken, but her innocence clear. Dalton, confronted with the evidence, broke after a single night in holding. Greed, envy, and desperation spilled out in his confession. The business deal that Richard had sabotaged, the massive debts Dalton tried to cover by threatening the Evans family, the envy that twisted for years into something darker. He'd used knowledge of the house's secrets, turning Charlotte's staged affair and Alex's presence into weapons. With Dalton's arrest, the clouds began to lift, but the wounds remained. Charlotte walked the halls of her home at night, sleepless, unable to forget what it felt like to be hunted. Alex returned to his small apartment, every noise outside now making him tense. Richard's recovery was slow. When he woke, there were questions about Charlotte, about Alex, about the things unsaid. The truth came out in pieces, painful but necessary. Charlotte confessed to the staged affair, to the fear that had driven her to deception. Richard, battered and changed by his brush with death, listened but did not judge as harshly as she feared. For the first time, they spoke as equals, not as distant partners. The foundation of their marriage had been shaken, but maybe, in time, it could be rebuilt. Alex, too, faced his own reckoning. His professional reputation survived, but something deeper had shifted inside him. He no longer saw his work as simply shaping bodies or pleasing clients. He had been pulled into something real, something dangerous, and survived. In the aftermath, he and Charlotte drifted apart, not out of anger, but from exhaustion, relief, and a strange respect. Their bond had been forged in crisis. Now, with the truth out, both were free to reclaim their own stories. The headlines faded after Dalton's conviction. To the outside world, the Evans scandal became just another true crime curiosity, a privileged family undone by secrets, an ambitious outsider exposed as a would-be killer. But for Charlotte and Alex, the experience left scars no one would ever see. Sometimes, Charlotte stood by the window at midnight, gazing out at the city lights, wondering how close she'd come to losing everything, and how, even now, she could never truly let her guard down again. In the end, the truth unraveled not just the blackmailer's plot, but every illusion at the heart of their lives. Trust, broken and rebuilt, became their only shield against the darkness. And somewhere, in the quiet after the storm, they learned that the cost of lies is always paid in the harshest light of day.